And now, today's featured speaker is Molly Godfrey, class of 2014. Molly is a viral content creator and a go-to relationship coach for high-achieving women in their 30s. She has been recognized as a trusted love advisor, helping her clients get unstuck and land their dream relationship. Her clients often hold executive positions at Fortune 500s, and through Molly's customized but repeatable framework, 72% of those are in exclusive relationships. Molly has mastered the art and science of fulfilling and meaningful relationships, and her work has captured the attention of close to 500,000 readers through her columns in Medium, Bustle, InStyle, and other large women's independent media sites. So without further ado, please join me in virtually welcoming Molly Godfrey.
Thank you so much, Bethany. Hello, everyone. It is so exciting to be here. Thank you to everyone at Bentley that invited me and extended this opportunity. So over the next 40 minutes, we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to try and keep us on schedule. But I'm going to introduce some of you guys, or I'm going to introduce some of my expertise in my coaching framework. So all the content that I'm going to be covering should be relevant no matter if you find yourself in a relationship, if you are dating, if you've been single for a long time. It should provide value no matter where you are or what stage you are. So I also want to mention for the men here, I am super, super excited that you're here, and congratulations to making it in this room. I would love to hear what had you sign up for this workshop. As Bethany mentioned, I work with women, so much of the context is going to be through a woman's perspective. But if you are a man, super exciting, you're going to get an inside sneak peek in a woman's experience in dating. And hopefully through a lot of this content, you're going to feel very seen and validated as we're going to be talking about you. I'm going to be talking quickly. There's a lot to cover, but the invitation is to stay as present as possible. Think about your own dating life and love life as we go through this content and filter everything through that context. I also recommend having a pen and paper. The second half is going to be an exercise where you are going to get to evaluate yourself and get to be really honest about what's going on in your relationship. So you can hit the next slide. So for those of you that don't know me, as Bethany mentioned, I am a go-to relationship coach for women in their 30s that are stuck in dating. I had a really interesting Bentley experience. I was the class of 2014, but I came in as the class of 2013, and I actually served a year with City Year and AmeriCorps. So I took advantage of Bentley's Give a Year program, but I was super involved in campus. I was big in service learning. I was an RA for 2 years in Copley South. And I was in a business fraternity, Delta Sigma Pi. And so I very much know and remember the corporate world, even though I made a big career change. So my clients, they are really powerful, incredible women. They've built incredible careers, but they're not landing in the right relationships a lot of the times. So they've come to me when they've exhausted going on dating apps, they've dated the wrong people, and when they're tired of feeling lonely in their dating lives. So you can go to the next slide. So this is just a good old Bentley pick, but I have to say and acknowledge the Bentley network has been invaluable when starting my business. And my freshman year roommate is actually in that photo. I don't know if she made it to the workshop, but we lived in Cedar 101, I think it was, the basement of Cedar. And we are still really good friends today. And she has been such a big support and actually was very formative in helping my writing career. So that's a good old Bentley memory there. You can go to the next slide. So more about me. In addition to coaching, I'm also a content writer. So I love to write, I love to share my story, and I love to create content that provides value and to actually help create more meaningful relationships. So I've had the opportunity to have my work virally featured. I've had 3 articles become very popular on the internet. And I've had some major press. I was recently interviewed by the Today Show, which is very exciting. I think that interview actually comes out today. And so I write frequently, but I've also worked with some A-list clients, Fortune 500 C-suite executives, powerful, high-achieving women. And more than half of my clients, as you heard, end up in exclusive dream relationships, usually within 4 to 6 months of working together. So you can go to the next slide. So people ask me, how did I become a dating and relationship coach? Well, this is a photo of me in Las Vegas celebrating my friend's bachelorette party. And I'll never forget, I was sitting on the edge of the pool, my feet were in the water, and I was looking around at all these couples and all these people around me. Couples in robes, couples snuggling up on their lounge chairs. They were having such a nice, fun time together. I remember feeling my stomach drop. I wanted that too. I was here celebrating this bachelorette party with all my closest friends. I had just celebrated a huge milestone at work. I was given this big partnership to manage. I had an amazing job in finance. They bought me a BMW. I had all these benefits. And I was on this trip and I knew that something was missing. I heard this whisper that there had to be something more. I didn't know what was keeping me from a relationship. I kept waiting for the perfect guy to show up. I didn't want to seem too needy or too available. And that was a huge mistake. I was protecting myself. I wasn't making my love life a priority, and work always came first. You can go to the next slide. And so I get what you're thinking. Maybe you're sitting there in this workshop and you're like, I love my life. I love spending time alone. I love being single. I'm really happy in my relationship. Life is fine. Now we're in this pandemic, like we can't even touch each other anymore. How are we even supposed to meet people? It's great that it's happening for your clients. It happened for you, but maybe you've tried everything: therapy, courses, matchmakers. You're always seeking out advice to improve, but maybe you feel hopeless that a fulfilling relationship could actually be possible for you. I used to be in the same spot and I thought I was a lost cause and that everyone could have these things except for me. Maybe if I was patient enough or went on more dates or held out hope, but all these were mistaken beliefs and mindsets. You can go to the next slide. And so today I work with absolute dream clients. They're at the top of their careers, they manage large teams, they're pioneers and they're experts in their field. And yet they're craving more depth in the experience of a deeply fulfilling relationship. They find me because life is usually going really, really well, but they start to notice the moments that when they're not working, they either feel alone or they feel lonely. Go to the next slide. And so I truly believe that being connected to others and feeling loved and supported by a partner creates a more dynamic and exciting life. I believe that we discover more of ourselves in deep connection with someone else. I also believe that our bodies are built for pleasure, and having a secure connection allows us to experience full self expression. So I have been able to help women find their partner and create deeply loving and fulfilling relationships. And I don't know about you, but I do not want to look back on my life and think about and regret that I didn't find love, that I didn't experience a deep, meaningful partnership, and that I missed out on real intimacy. You totally deserve to have that too. You can go to the next slide. So in the next 35 or so minutes, I'm going to teach you everything I've learned over the last 4 years so that you don't make the same costly and painful mistakes that I did. I'm going to teach you how to have self-mastery in relationships by means of understanding yourself, understanding the opposite gender. We're going to talk a lot about men and how to really create and embody an amazing relationship with yourself and everything that goes into true personal power and magnetism. So you can go to the next slide. So also in this workshop, we're going to have some fun. I don't know about you guys, but I've been spending a lot of time on Zoom. So I want you guys to be engaged. I want you to participate. We're going to have a lot of fun. So all goes according to plan. There should be a poll that pops up. And the poll is, how do you think that we spend 41% of our average human life? How do you think we spend our time? The options are working on our relationships, on our phones, on Zoom. Okay, so you can go to the next slide. Oh my gosh, you guys got it. Yeah, survey says, so how do you think we spend 41% of our lives? So I wanted to give a shocking stat for you guys planning this. And Reebok did a really, really extensive study back in 2016. And they wanted to figure out how much of people's lives they were spending exercising. And what they found was that 41% of our lives, that's a huge number. That's almost half of our entire lifetime is spent on technology and on our phones. If you think that stat is shocking, you can go to the next slide. Guys, it's not even a whole percentage. 0.45% of the average human life is spent experiencing physical intimacy, having sex. Can you believe, not even a whole percentage. You can go to the next slide for another visual representation. So get out your magnifying glass because you're going to have to actually zoom in. Almost half of our life is spent on technology, sitting down. We spend 0.69% exercising and 0.45 experiencing physical intimacy, which is backwards because relationships, physical intimacy, seem way better than being connected to our phones and being on technology. So we have something backwards here. So you can go to the next slide. So one day you're going to wake up, because I hear this from clients all the time. You're going to wake up maybe next to the wrong person, maybe next to someone and realizing they don't actually know you. You don't actually know them. Maybe you're going to wake up and realize all the time that you're not spending working, you're alone and you're lonely. You can go to the next slide. So today we're going to cover the 3 areas that I believe really create inner magnetism, which creates deeper connections. So obviously sex is on there, but we're not going to talk about that today because we cannot have depth and physical intimacy unless we master these first 2 areas. So we're going to talk about men and relationships with the opposite gender. We're going to talk about relationships with self, and we can't get to the third without a really strong foundation in these first 2 areas. So there's a lot of depth in this stuff. I'm going to jump into the first area now. So you can go to the next slide. So let's talk misconceptions. Who here has ever been given some bad dating advice or bad life advice? Like sometimes when I start with a client, they say, you know, it feels like I'm going to have to spend this whole coaching experience just undoing all the bad advice I've been given. I hear that all the time. I'll never forget, right out of Bentley, I was at a work happy hour and I was telling my coworker how much I liked this new guy that I just started dating. She very seriously turned to me and she said, Molly, whatever you do, don't tell him you like him. Awful advice. So I'd love to hear what some of the worst dating advice you guys got, but here's some really bad dating advice I hear from clients. 1, the right person will appear when you stop looking. I'll give that a half truth. Some of that is true, and some of that is just passive delusion. We actually have to be taking action in the areas of our relationships. Relationships take investment, they take work. Some other bad advice I hear, which I got: never admit you like someone, never admit that you have needs, try and be as low maintenance as possible. Exactly. Don't let them call you. We'll get into that one. And the third, which we are going to jump into right now, is that men are lazy and they don't like to help out. So this is a really big misconception I hear from women. And while unfortunately that might have been your experience, this myth is false. If men are showing up lazy, it's likely because we've taught or trained them somehow to show up that way. Men are actually natural providers and they have hearts of duty and service and they want to show up for us. But we haven't always been given the skills or taught the skills to allow them to be of service, to allow them to co-create the relationship. And so they become complacent, bored, and apathetic. Men, I'm here to advocate for you. Sometimes you are very misunderstood. You can go to the next slide. So we're diving more into men. And the next thing I want you to get is that men are not women. And so when we really understand how men work, how we show up in our dating life can transform, and we can actually get in the right partnership. The problem is we relate to men as if they're women. We expect them to act, do, and think just like we do. And this is a problem because we're not wired in the same way. And so we end up with unrealistic expectations they can't meet, and they leave us feeling resentful and lashing out. What we need to get is that when we have the tools to actually see men as men, we can fully appreciate their hearts of service, how brilliant they can be. And when they feel understood and approved of, they feel like they can win with us. And so the relationship is very, very powerful. You can go to the next slide. The next mistake I see a lot is we give away our power. This is not even just specific to men. Bosses, jobs, anything external. When we put anything on a pedestal and give away all our power, thinking they know best. Someone said, I saw a chat pop up, have them call you first. When we put all our power into other people, we're giving them all our self-esteem and giving them the power over our happiness. And the problem is when people are on a pedestal, then they call all the shots and they become responsible for our happiness. And so what we need to get is everyone is their own person, especially your partner. Your partner is their own person, and we have to keep them right sized. Turn on, femininity, desire, it all originates in the woman's body. And so when we give all our power away, we get depleted and then we get resentful. And so we actually need to learn the tools to co-create in a relationship and not give all our power away. You go to the next slide. So the last problem I hear is, can't tell you how many times I hear women say, or really people say, I can't get them to commit. I can't get them to take this relationship seriously, XYZ. And there's a lot of blame in that statement. And what I want to convey today is that commitment is an energy that begins within. Commitment and action is an energy that the universe responds really precisely to. And so if we haven't committed to ourselves, either by way of choosing ourselves, choosing our truth and our desires, no matter what, we can't expect someone else to show up with that same vibration of commitment into our life. And so men are really perfect responders, and they're always acting as a mirror to when we're not being honest or deeply committed to ourselves. Okay, so you can go to the next slide. So I want to tell you about one of my clients. Her name's Amy. She's 33. She works in e-commerce for a Fortune 500 company. And she came to me because she kept getting in the same pattern in the same relationship over and over again. So she was in the midst of a breakup, and she just kept thinking, like, how do I keep ending up in these unfulfilling, boring relationships where I don't actually feel seen and heard? She's like, there's got to be more. What am I doing wrong? So we worked together. We came up with a new plan, and we actually found that she had a lot of resentment and baggage towards previous relationships she was recreating with new partners. So we uncovered a lot of her unconscious patterns. We got her feeling confident and clear. And in her last month of coaching, she ended up meeting someone, and she just celebrated her 4-month anniversary with this new partner. And so I share this because it's super important to learn how and why men operate. Otherwise, we will continue to project our unmet needs, which leaves us both feeling really frustrated, and they don't have an honest chance of succeeding with us. All right, so you can go to the next slide. So just to review, men are not women. We have to relate to them as their own people and understand how they work. We have to learn how to keep our power for ourselves and learn how to set boundaries and treat our partner like their own person. And we have to understand that commitment begins within. And when we've got that really, really strong internally rooted, people in our lives show up and want to give us that. So you can go to the next slide. So we very briefly went through men mastery. I have so much more where that came from. Now we are going to go into, that is next up. We're going to go into self-mastery. So you can go to the next slide. So another really, really big myth and misconception I hear is that we're told it's a numbers game in dating. And that's really, really awful advice. If that's advice you've been told, you're wasting your time. And if you're anything like me, your time is a really precious commodity and not something you have a lot of time to waste. Not only are we told it's a numbers game, but we're also told a lot of the times to be nice, to be agreeable, to be low maintenance, while simultaneously hearing that no one likes an overly confident woman. She's crazy. And so you can go on as many dates as you can and try and play it cool, but after enough tries, you're going to see that that's wrong. And what we really need to be doing is doing the work from the inside out. Having a healthy and fulfilling relationship is an inside job, and it's about becoming magnetic internally so that you can connect with quality people from the very start. So to round us out, we are going to go into the self-mastery. If you can go to the next slide. All right. So I don't know if you guys can see me, but you guys at this point might be asking, can you really help me find a partner? Can you really have a fulfilling relationship in a pandemic? Can you really meet someone in today's day and age? I'm here to say yes, yes, yes. I help women all the time create space for a partner to come in with ease, to feel more confident connecting with men and others, and to be in touch with their bodies, to be in touch with their needs and how to communicate powerfully. So yes, if you're sitting there wondering, you can have that. And the relationship you want is an inside job. So now we're going to move into self-mastery, and you are actually going to get to do some self-work here. Perfect. Okay. So this looks like a lot. We're going to go through it in more detail, but this is what I call the pillars of self-mastery. There's 9 here. There's 9 areas for us to look at and examine. And when we learn these areas, we can show up way more fully in our relationships, but especially in dating and when trying to call in a committed partner. So you can go to the next slide. So I'm really, really committed to having women have a meaningful relationship, because otherwise, what is the point? Having real depth, real intimacy, and having a really meaningful connection. And in order to have that, I believe that we need to have, go to the next slide. We need to have our person that feels like a companion in our life, someone that we can do the big things with, the little things with, the exciting things, the mundane things with. Having that person that feels like a true companion. I also believe we have to find someone that can contribute to our life, that makes our life easier, that supports us. And we need to learn how to be a contribution in the relationship as well. What else goes into a meaningful relationship? I have family here because a lot of the women I work with are interested in starting families or having families, but I could also write shared values. In order to have a meaningful relationship, we need to have shared values and be on the same page and have the same level of integrity as our partner. So you can go to the next slide. So how do we get that? I've talked about self a lot now. It starts with having a really, really strong, sturdy foundation and relationship with ourselves. You can go to the next slide. Next, we need to understand partnership. We need to be able to show up for partnership. We need to know what it looks like to be a good partner and how to be a healthy partner. Super important to have a meaningful relationship. You can go to the next slide. Next, we need to master inner confidence. So confidence in ourselves, confidence in our truth, confidence in our expression, confidence in another person as well. So you can go to the next slide. So how do we create healthy partnership? Well, it starts with acceptance. We have to learn and cultivate deep acceptance for ourselves, the good, the bad, the messy, and the ugly, if we ever wish to accept someone else. In order to have partnership, we have to accept and love and see the person for who they are if we really want to have a healthy relationship. We've also got to be able to trust ourselves, trust our truth, trust our expression, trust in ourselves to stay connected during conflict. And so it's really important to trust in ourselves to have healthy partnership. We've also got to be able to trust others. We'll get more into that. And relationship itself. So what does that look like? Being really, really rooted in ourselves, having a super strong internal sense of safety, that no matter who you're with, no matter what city you live in, no matter what partner you have, you know deeply, fundamentally who you are, and it's unshakable. We also have to be able to master vulnerability. Vulnerability definitely with ourselves, being able to look at what's sometimes uncomfortable to look at, what's sometimes uncomfortable to acknowledge, being able to be really vulnerable with ourselves and feel all the edges if we ever want to experience vulnerability with someone else. We also need to feel really clear about what we want and know what we want and be clear about our desires and feel confident in our desires. You can go to the next slide. And how do we cultivate confidence? Well, we give ourselves permission to have the things that we want. We trust ourselves enough to go after the things that we want. We give ourselves permission to really desire a lot, to have a big appetite, to want a lot in life. No one can give you permission except yourself. We also need to master, like I mentioned, communication and understanding of the opposite gender if we want to feel confident in our relationships. We also have to master rejection, being willing to fail fast and being able to fail quickly, being able to express our desires without too much attachment. If we don't know how to master rejection, we will likely avoid dating and not have the depth of experience in life that is possible. So we're going to go through all of these in more detail. And so we're going to figure out, you can go to the next slide. Stay there, actually. We're going to figure out what you need to focus on so that you can become more confident in dating your most powerful self and really and truly call in your most meaningful relationship or show up as a better, stronger, healthier partner. So, by the way, this is all research-based. I took all of the clients that I worked with, everything that women came to me with. This is all specifically from real live case examples and case studies. So there's going to be a poll at the end, and I'm super curious to see what the trend is, but I can guarantee there's going to be some identification in what we go through next. So you can go to the next slide. And yep, we're going to go through a poll. And now we're going to go, you can go to the next slide as well. So, or actually stay there on the traffic light, if you can go back one. Okay, I'll explain. Perfect. Okay, so this is called a traffic light exercise. So you are going to get to evaluate yourself in each of these areas. So we're going to go through each pillar one by one and see where you measure up in each category. So while we love to be optimistic, I do want you to give yourself the opportunity to really be honest and seeing where you need to go and where you need to start focusing. So red is going to be poor, needs a lot of improvement. You're struggling in this area. Yellow is doing okay, opportunity for improvement. And green is you're rocking it and you have this area mastered. So you're going to get to self-evaluate yourself in each of these areas. So green is great, yellow is improvement, red is probably an area that needs some attention. And so be honest with yourself. If you're between a yellow and a green, go for yellow. If you're between a yellow and a red, go for red. So next slide now. So the first area is the opposite gender. So if you are red in this area, men or women, they can't do anything right for you. You're constantly complaining that there's no quality men in your life, there's no quality women in your life. If you're a man, maybe you're saying women are crazy and complex and you can't figure them out. If you're a woman, maybe you're saying men are lazy, they don't show up for you. Maybe your relationships are only first dates or maybe very casual. And you feel powerless in connecting with the opposite gender. So that's red. If you're green in this area, you're able to get your needs met by the opposite gender without whining and complaining and emasculating and making the other person feel inadequate. You're able to fully see and appreciate them for their willingness, their providing, their service, and you hold realistic expectations and help them win with you. The opposite gender wants to be in your presence and they are left better than when you got in the relationship. You guys grow together. So take a minute and evaluate if you're red, yellow, or green here. All right, you can go to the next slide. So the next area, trust in others. If you're red in this area, past events are likely running the show in your life. Maybe you're very reactive, you're overly sensitive, you're skeptical of others, you doubt their intentions. Maybe you feel really insecure and if fear of abandonment runs the show, you always feel like you need to be in control. If you're green in this area, you're able to assume the best in others. You believe that others want you to have what you want. You have a willingness to reveal your full self to others, and you lead with an open heart. Your baggage is in the past, and everyone has an honest chance with you. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Rooted in self. If you're red in this area, rooted in self looks like you let other people's thoughts, opinions influence your own thoughts and feelings. You lack confidence. Your thoughts and moods are dependent on how your relationships are doing that day, and you're stuck in comparison. If you're green in this area, you have internal safety. Maybe you say something like, it's not my job to care about what other people think of me. You're led by intuition, your body, and you have an unshakable trust and confidence, and you're able to give a clear yes or no, set boundaries, and you fully respect yourself. Okay, you can go to the next one. So next we have vulnerability. If you're red in this area and you struggle with vulnerability, you have a hard time letting people in fully. You have a hard time making deep connections. You lose friends easily. You're defensive and guarded, and you avoid talking about yourself and taking up space. You don't like receiving compliments. If you're green in this area, you speak the truth in real time. Nothing is withheld. You lack self-consciousness. You have emotional depth and intimacy in your relationships. And you feel seen and gotten by others. You're able to freely express and share yourself. You can go to the next slide. So next we have knowing. If you're red in this area of internal knowing, you lack clarity. You feel stuck and stagnant. You're not sure how to move forward. You might have a lot of reoccurring patterns and people who come in and out of your life. Maybe you feel like life is passing you by. You feel regret, and electricity and spark fades easily from your relationships. If you're green in this area, you're able to slow down, listen to your inner voice. You can tune out noise. Life feels exciting, electric, and juicy. You feel honest with yourself and you embody your feminine nature fully. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Next, we have rejection. If you're red in this area, you create stories about others. You avoid, maybe there's no dating life to speak of. You're focused on business or work. Your needs or desires go unexpressed and you withhold. Maybe you find yourself as a perfectionist. If you're red in this area, or if you're green in this area, you're able to lean into discomfort. You're able to take risks in the face of fear. You exercise choice. You trust and stay open no matter what. You exercise boundaries. You're able to honor and choose yourself unapologetically and take full ownership of your desires and needs. Okay, you can go to the next one. Next, we have trust in self. So if you're red in this area, you seek affirmation and approval everywhere, sometimes in the wrong ways. Maybe you overthink. You might be very clueless to patterns of self-sabotage, ignore red flags, can't relax, self-censor, and you're always looking to others for advice. If you're green in this area, you're confident. You own your full yes and your no. You have the ability to redirect when something is off. You're able to move forward, you're relaxed, you take ownership, and you make the harder choice and choose discomfort. All right, we're getting to the end here. Next, we have acceptance. If you're red in this area, you're very critical of yourself. Maybe you're always the single one. You feel frustrated, anxious, you have shame from the past, either a divorce or a breakup, resentment towards others. Things could always be better. You have a hard time forgiving yourself and enjoying life. If you're green in this area, you feel free with your past. You feel free in the present. You exercise self-love, have patience with self and others. You're compassionate. You have the ability to be with others where they're at, experience joy and healthy self-esteem. And last but not least, go to the next slide. You have permission. If you are red in the area of permission, you might neglect self-care, judge your emotions. Maybe you're easily upset and angry. You avoid asking for help, struggle to communicate effectively. Maybe everything is great except your romantic relationships, and you don't allow for joy, pleasure, or fun. You don't believe that what you want is really possible. If you're green in this area, you have integrity with yourself and others. You give yourself grace. You allow the good in to experience the good. You have willingness to show up, a limitless mindset, and really, really strong rooted personal power. So you can go to the next slide. So we're going to do a poll and see if there's a trend. We'd love to hear, what are the 3 main areas you saw for yourself that you would really like to work on shifting? You can go to the next slide and put up the Venn diagram again. There it is again. Okay. Oh, wow. Cool to see there is trust in others. Yeah. How cool. Thanks for everyone that interacted, engaged. Acceptance. Yeah, I find acceptance is a really big one. Vulnerability and rejection are up there, trusting others. Got it. So everyone had something in each. So cool. Thanks for voting, guys. Okay. So let's keep moving. You can go to the next slide. So a question got emailed to me about meeting people in a pandemic, and I wanted to, maybe this will answer that question. So I want you to hear about my client Megan. She's 7 years out of college. She works in a marketing agency in San Francisco, and she came to me July of this past year, so peak pandemic. She was connecting with lots of people virtually. She was going on a lot of dates. And the first half of the year, she was really burnt out and she was tired of dating that she wasn't even trying anymore. She found me through a workshop similar to this, and she knew that something wasn't working. So together we came up with a new plan for her. I actually did this exercise and she evaluated what were the areas that weren't working for her. We discovered her attachment style. She scored really low on being able to understand and speak boundaries and speak up for herself in her relationship. She ended up meeting someone at the very end of our coaching in the last month, and they actually just celebrated their 4-month anniversary as well. They spent the holidays together. They ended up doing a couple's coordinated Halloween costume. And she just shared that she thinks she's falling in love with this person. So I want to give you permission and let you know that people are meeting in the pandemic. I believe she met this person on a dating app, but really it's the inner work that can transform so much and allow us to call on this person no matter what the circumstances of life are. So you can go to the next slide. So we did 2 different exercises. We briefly looked at men and our relationships with men. We also really looked at ourselves and where we can start to put focus and shift our attention. And so I want you to get that this work can really transform confidence from the inside out and really effortlessly attract an ideal partner, connections, and relationships into our life. So go to the next slide. This is just a review. This is the areas of self-mastery. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And so I want you to picture a day. Imagine that you're sitting next to your friends, your phone rings, and your partner texts you. He reaches out because he wants to remind you that he loves you. Your body fills up and you feel so, so loved and appreciated by him. Picture a day when you can't stop smiling at your phone. You feel excited when your partner texts you, even months into the relationship. You make each other laugh, you have endless adventures, and you feel free and most yourself you've ever felt in a relationship. And I want you to picture a day when you roll over in the morning, you see your partner, husband, wife, and the love of your life still asleep. You can't help smile with so much gratitude. You never imagined this day was possible for you. So you can go to the next slide. So as a coach, I'm very action oriented. Coaching it's a process of getting accountability, getting directive support. So take a minute. What is an action that you can take this month? This is a time of year. It's funny that I got reached out to for this workshop. This is a time of year I hear from a lot of people. You know, this Hallmark holiday has us reevaluate what's not working in our love lives. And so what is an action you can take this month? Your action can even be as simple as starting to have more awareness in one of the areas that you identified. And so if you're thinking, wow, this is a lot, that was a ton of content, Molly, we just went through like this whole excavation, you're right. This is statistically overwhelming for someone to do on their own. This is a lot of work, and we can only do so much by ourselves before realizing that you actually don't know how to change and improve your life on your own. That's why so many people work with me. So you can go to the next slide. So I want you to keep imagining, what if you felt free from your past? Baggage was no longer in your sphere and you felt totally present and alive in the day-to-day. Why don't you imagine feeling really clear and confident in your desires, feeling confident to express them, knowing what you want, being really focused on what you want? What if you were a pro at boundaries? You had no problem setting them, maintaining them, holding them with people, speaking up for yourself. Also want you to imagine feeling really energized by dating and like it's cultivating attention for you or cultivating energy for you instead of depleting you. I also want you to imagine the ability, like these women that you heard from that I've coached, calling in a dream partner with total ease. I also want you to imagine meeting your person and feeling really, really loved and supported. I know it's possible for you, and I want nothing more than to help you have that experience. So you can go to the next slide. I created something super special for you guys. So if you're, again, like that was a lot of information, I would love to go through this in the privacy of my own space by myself. If you go to, I created a special landing page for you guys, mollygodfrey.com/Bentley. You can go there right now. Once you put in your email, you will get a copy of this presentation. So you can comb through it in more detail. You can look at it. You can spend some real time without my voice in the picture. Also, when you submit your email, you will get a ton of resources. I have all sorts of content, whether you're dating, if you're in a conflict right now in a relationship, if you're trying to figure out if you're in the right relationship, you will get a ton of content in addition to interviews and podcasts. So mollygodfrey.com/Bentley, specific for this workshop. Head there, you will get a ton of, these are totally free resources. I want you to have them. I want to provide this value to your relationships. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So there's some of you in this audience saying, oh my gosh, this was so enlightening. I am ready to up-level my relationships. I want to take a next step. Some of you are wanting to know how to work with me one-on-one. I will tell you exactly how to go about that process. So the best way to do that is to email me and connect, molly@mollygodfrey.com. Introduce yourself. In the subject line, you can put interested or Bentley workshop. Wow, oh my goodness, whatever you want to share in the email. Tell me where you're at, what your traffic light results were, connect. And I want to let you know, people have asked me recently, they're like, how is your business doing in the pandemic? Business is better than ever. These are skills that we are not taught, but they are so important, especially for today's day and age. We've skipped a lot of steps in dating right now. Like, we can't just go out and casually get a drink with someone as safe as we used to. We actually have to learn how to connect. And so I do not have that much room left in my coaching practice, but I have 2 spots this month and next. So don't sit on this. If you are feeling compelled and you learned a lot in this workshop, send me an email. You can go to the next slide. So what do I do over these 4 months? I've talked about coaching a lot. It is very laser focused. It's highly personalized. It is very individualized. So what do? We look at all the patterns that haven't worked in the past. We leave the past in the behind. We get really connected to yourself, a deep level of self-acceptance, and really starting to become comfortable and confident in your desires. And the last stage is living, embodying the experience of a new relationship, integrating this work and living a new life and allowing yourself to have a new experience than you've had in the past. Those are results that you can expect. Go to the next slide. So post-coaching, what do I see typically happen? More than half my clients meet their person in a dream relationship in a pandemic. They feel super confident in themselves and their new partners. A lot of them tell me people treat me differently. Their coworkers treat them differently. They get raises. They have a new level of self-respect, and as a result, others respect them. They also experience deeper connection and more intimacy. So you can go to the next slide. So how to connect. Introduce yourself via email, molly@mollygodfrey.com. Put in the subject line interested or Bentley workshop. From there, we'll chat, we'll connect, we'll see if working together is a good fit. If it is, we will book a strategy session and talk more about coaching in depth. You can go to the next slide. So are you sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, I should have had a friend here. My friend really needs to hear this information. Are you the friend that's always getting vented on, or do you feel like the dating coach for your friend? Send them to that same link I gave you, mollygodfrey.com/Bentley. They will receive this same workshop. They will receive slides and resources. And I'm actually teaching this again post Valentine's Day next week. You can go to the next slide. So I'm here to be your cheerleader. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed this workshop today, but go find love, go experience more connection, reignite your stagnant dating life. I know it is possible. I'm here to give you that permission. And there's one more slide you can go to. And then I think we have time for Q&A now. So let me know how we go from here.
Thank you so much, Molly. That was amazing and informative, and I hope everyone was able to get a lot out of it. I know the exercises were probably really helpful for a lot of us. So thank you. And we do have a few questions that were pre-submitted, but if you have any questions that you want to ask Molly right now while we have her, please enter them into the Q&A box that's available right now. But we'll start with one that was pre-submitted. So you talked a little bit in the beginning of the session about bad advice in dating, but what about some of the common mistakes you see in relationships that are actually relationships?
Yeah. So yes, it's a wonderful question. I get this one a lot. So I also talked about it being like we're told it's a numbers game. So one of the big mistakes I see is people continuing to date and thinking maybe if they find a different person. And really the big mistake I see is not doing the inner work and not knowing, not being self-aware, like not knowing what triggers us or not knowing what like what our desires are. So I see one of the biggest mistakes I see is a lack of self-awareness and expecting other people to draw that out of us. That's probably one of the big areas I see. I also see an inability to set boundaries and having expectations of others while not being able to really communicate effectively. And it's super important in the first few weeks of dating. We're really helping someone understand how to treat us and how to be with us. And so those first few weeks of a relationship are super crucial. But boundaries is probably the biggest area, like across the board, no matter who you are, I work with in coaching. And so that's a big mistake I see is not setting boundaries and then getting resentful and withholding. Another big mistake I see in dating is, yeah, we give our power away. We think that it's the dating app's fault. We think it's the pandemic's fault. We think it's all the other circumstances. And when we do that, we're literally giving our power away. But when we like remind ourselves, like everything we want is in our control if we're willing to take action and move forward. And so we a victim mindset is a really big mistake I see. And it can be really disempowering. So remembering that you actually have the power, there's a lot in your control to do and change and transform. And then another mistake I see, there's also just some really like tools that a lot of this can be learned. So how men work, how women work, how to like communication tools and tips. So a lot of it I see is just a lack of education that we have in this area of our life. And so that's why it can be so just getting yourself the right information and getting tools and having resources and support. But that's a big mistake I see is we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. So I hope that answers that question.
And you said it's the pandemic's fault. How we have another question. How do you meet people during a pandemic? What are the best dates to set up? What have you found in your experience with your clients?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have so many interesting stories. A lot of my clients are meeting people online on dating apps, but a lot of my clients don't want to be on dating apps right now. And I give them permission. I'm like, that's not the only way you can meet people. Yes, we're in a pandemic. One of my clients actually met her new boyfriend on LinkedIn, which I thought was really funny. It was an old coworker, and she did this work. So she was in a different place and actually had that magnetism that I spoke about and like came out of thin air. I also have a client who's a writer like me, and someone reached out to one of her blog posts and emailed her and asked her out on a date. So a lot of things are happening virtually, but it's really what I'm seeing is it's such a mindset and internal shift. If we're not actually open, no matter how we meet someone, it's not going to go well. But a lot of my clients are going to virtual like speed dating events, networking events, different workshops. Then I also recommend just like telling people in your life that you're looking to meet someone and who you're looking to meet. And I actually had a client go on a blind date a couple of days ago. So letting the people know in your life, not from a place like owning it, being like, I'm open to this. This is what I want. But sometimes we have so much shame and we withhold these things. And so the people in our lives don't know how they could potentially help support us. So I've seen a lot of things: LinkedIn, dating apps, emails, blind dates, virtual events. But if you're really open and you really want it, that's the experience I'm seeing is clients they want it. And so they're getting into relationships in all sorts of ways. I hope that answered that.
What about dating apps? Do you have any that you prefer tell your clients to like target over other dating apps?
It's a good question. I think I've had everyone meet one of the clients featured here met her boyfriend on Hinge. One of them met on Tinder, Bumble. What I will say about dating apps is making your profile really, really clear from the start about what you're looking for. And that's typically when my clients have the most success. Like, what do you like? Like, what are you looking for? But then being really honest about what kind of what you're looking for in a partner is really what I'm seeing. When we're just honest from the start, you will also attract an honest, upfront, able to communicate partner. But in terms of dating apps, I've seen it across the board. I think Hinge is really like the long term. If you're looking for a long term partnership, that's like their brand, they want you to delete the app. So they have really good branding. And I can speak personally that one of the women in this case study did meet her no boyfriend on there.
Great. What about, one of the questions was how to leave an impact on people's minds. And I think they're probably referring to meeting new people and making new connections and like leaving a lasting impression.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there was some study that I am not recalling right now, but we're most attracted to people who are authentic, who are living in their truth, who are aligned with their desire, who are in alignment with themselves and are confident. When we see that out there, that's when we think of leadership and who we admire out in the world, we're attracted to that because they're these people that are very confident in themselves, they're articulate. And so in my coaching, I help women to just really be able to be upfront about what they want, communicate clearly. And these partners that they meet, they're like, wow, I haven't had that experience. I've had to either play games before, I've had to like navigate all this stuff and like get this information out of you. If you are clear and confident in doing what you love and are connected to your desire and your truth, that is where personal magnetism comes from. And that's what I see time and time again in the inner work that I do with clients.
Great. On the flip side, someone wants to know how you kindly detach yourself from a relationship that no longer serves your best interests. I can imagine that's probably even more difficult during a pandemic and being stuck inside.
It is. It is. That's a good question. Let me see if I can answer this concisely. You kindly detach yourself. I think it's important to, like, first, if you haven't gotten the gist of this message in the throughout the workshop, it's personal responsibility. So it's really looking at, okay, like, is this work done with this person? Is there anything else I want? What do I want the next form of our relationship to feel like? So being really reflective. And then when you've gotten that level of self-honesty, like either getting support or like practicing what this conversation could sound like. And I always say to clients, like, stick the landing. If you don't want to be friends or if you don't want to be connected with someone, being like, hey, I really appreciate this connection, or this was amazing, like express some gratitude and then be like, this is what I want moving forward. And then stick that. When we leave the door ajar, that's when people still feel like they have permission to come in and stay connected. So how do you detach as you really do the internal work to make sure you're done, clearly communicate what it is that you want and get really honest about what it is that you want, and then hold the boundary. And it can be really, really hard, but I would say like setting the boundary and then holding it. When we set a boundary, but then still allow them to communicate with us or still allow them to check things, like I'm a big fan of removing people from social, like if you're trying to move on, like removing them and with a lot of love, being like, this relationship served me and we're done in this form. And then the next step is really to just start rebuilding your life one step at a time. When we still keep a lot of attention on what's not working, being able to move forward and focusing on your own life is really the way to move on after that. I hope that answered it.
Okay, and we just had a question come in. What is a good first step to the path of mastering vulnerability and self-trust if that's not in your strength right now?
Yeah. So self-trust, I love this one. Because this is a big area I work with all the time. I have a post on Instagram about it later. But self-trust, we build that by showing up for ourselves minute to minute. So it can be as simple as like creating some sort of routine or some sort of practice or putting something on your calendar that you stick to every single week. So it's like you get in the habit of doing something and showing up for yourself and you're like, got it, I am trustworthy. Also, how to build self-trust is to be honest. What creates that, it's called cognitive dissonance. When we're a no to something but we say yes, our body feels that. Our body knows that we're a no, but we said yes. And so what happens is we have cognitive dissonance and then we have this experience where we don't feel like we can trust ourselves. So being really honest and setting clear boundaries is how we start to get more aligned. And when we can honor our bodies in that way and our truth in that way, then we're able to actually trust ourselves. But if we're not being honest with ourselves, we're also not gonna be able to trust ourselves. So that's that part. Vulnerability, that's a great question. Something simple I can leave you with is like naming things when they're happening. So sometimes things feel vulnerable because we don't really like understand the experience that we're having, or it's like a lot to feel. So something in a relationship or someone you just started dating, or even with yourself, being able to be like, got it. I think I feel like kind of sad right now and being curious with it. Or if you're just started dating someone, being like, naming it like, hey, it actually feels like we're a little bit disconnected right now. Is there something going on? Is there something you need from me? Like starting to name what you're feeling and giving voice to it and giving attention to it can start to help you expand what you're experiencing. But sometimes the issue with vulnerability is it's like, it's a lot to feel. So we don't really know how to navigate it. But if you can start just bringing mindfulness to your own experience and in relationships, being like, hey, it feels like you're kind of mad at me. What's going on? Naming it can sometimes disarm us and have us feel more integrated. I hope that helps. That's a good question though. It's big Pandora's box on that one.
So we are coming up on the hour, and like Molly said, we did share her contact information in the chat, and we're also going to share in our follow-up email that will go out either tomorrow or on Monday. So please look out for that. Connect with Molly. Molly, do you have any like last wisdom parting words you want to leave our group with today?
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for coming. Definitely stay connected. Download the slides. It was a lot, I know. But I just want to say, like, relationships really do make our lives so much more dynamic, so much more interesting. And it is happening. I see it out there. If we can approach it with a new mindset, I am so confident. If you're out there being like, I haven't dated in years, or like, I'm here to support you. I am your cheerleader. Stay connected. I have tons of content and resources should you want it. But I just wanted to give you permission to have the relationship you want because I know it's possible. I see it happening all the time. So I think that's it for me.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all. I hope you join us for more virtual events in the future and have a great day. Thank you.